Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. What you are looking at on your screen is today's agenda. So I'll be discussing with you today operation toolbar, relimitations toolbar and transformation toolbar. So let's begin. Now I already have a file opened up, so let me just go to the sketcher straight away. And here is the operation toolbar. First tool present in operation toolbar is corner. To demonstrate this to you how it works, I'll create two lines. Suppose there are two lines as shown on the screen and you wish to apply a corner. To apply the corner, you will select the tool and then select the lines between which you wish to apply the corner. Based on your cursor location, a solution will be provided to you. When you move your cursor, all possible solutions that can be used will be shown to you, and if you click anywhere on the screen, the corner will be created. Okay, let me just click here anywhere on the screen. So here you can see when I clicked here, a corner has been created with some radius value and the remaining lines have been trimmed. Okay, you can edit the radius value by double clicking. Suppose if I double click, I can edit the radius value and my corner radius has been changed. Okay, now in this case what happened is that the lines actually got trimmed. Okay, what if I don't want the lines to get trimmed? I want the lines to remain intact and yet I want that the corner should be applied. Now there are many possible ways in which you can create corner. When you select the command, actually you'll see that the sketch tools toolbar, it provides you several options for applying the corner. Okay, within which there is the third option that you see, that is no trim. If you apply a corner using this sub option, the corner that will be created, it will not trim the lines. Let me just select this option and then apply the corner. You select the first line, you select the second line, and let me create a corner. You'll see that the corner has been created, but the lines have actually not been trimmed. Okay, but now I have to edit the radius. Okay, I can double click and edit the radius value. Say let us make it 20. Okay, suppose if you want to avoid the second step, that is double clicking on the radius and then editing the radius value, you can create the corner straight away by specifying a radius value from the sketch tool itself. When you select the corner command and select the lines like I'm doing, you are provided with the dialog box in the sketch tools toolbar itself. Okay, you can use this dialog box to create the corner radius directly. Okay, this value that you specify here, that value will be used to create the corner. Okay, you keep your cursor in the location where you want the corner to be created. Suppose if I want the corner to be created here, okay, I'll keep my cursor here and specify the radius value. Let me just make it 20. So you'll see the corner has been created in that particular area where I kept my cursor. Okay, so depending on where you want your corner, you can basically keep your cursor in that particular location and specify the radius value from sketch tools toolbar. Alternatively, you can simply click anywhere where you want the solution and create the corner and edit the radius afterwards. It's your choice. Okay, let us have a look at the other options. Second option that I skipped is trim first element. So if I select this option, what will happen is the first element, the first line that you select, okay, that line will be trimmed, but the other line that you select will not be trimmed. Okay, let me select this as my first line, this as my second line. Okay, and let me take this as my solution. Okay, you'll see the first line that I selected gets trimmed, but the second line did not get trimmed. Okay, so this is how you can create corner with the use of option trim first element. Okay, let me just show you other options as well. This option we discussed already, which is no trim. Third option is standard lines trim. Okay, if I select this option, you'll see when I create the corner, what will happen is that corner is created, but lines beyond the point where the two lines actually intersect, those lines will get trimmed, but from point up till the corner where basically corner meets the line, that line will actually remain the same and it will be a standard line element. Okay, you'll understand the difference when I discuss other options, but to understand, simply see that the lines beyond this particular point where the two lines actually intersected have been trimmed, but from this point up till the corner where the corner actually meets the line is actually standard. Okay, so let us see the other options. This is standard line trim. Okay, the other option is basically construction line trim. Okay, if I select this option, select the lines. Okay, so here you will see that from the point to the arc, okay, to this corner where this actually corner meets the line, that line has been turned construction, but beyond that point the lines have been trimmed. Okay, so this is known as construction line trim. Okay, let us see other options, which is the last option, basically construction lines no trim. In this case the lines will not be trimmed, okay, but they'll turn into construction lines up till where the corner actually meets the lines. Okay, let us make this as well. We select the lines. Okay, so here you will see the lines are actually turned into construction, they are not trimmed. Okay, so this is another option that you can use in corner. Okay, so similar options are actually also present for the second tool that we have. But let me just deleting. You also have another tool to create chamfer. Okay, if you don't want to create a fillet, instead you can create a chamfer. Okay, when you create a chamfer, similar tools that were there in corner are also present here. Trim all elements. Okay, trim first element, no trim, construction line trim, standard line trim, those sort of options. Okay, so I'm not going to demonstrate these to you. Instead, I'll show you there are different ways to create chamfer. When you select the lines, okay, you're presented with three options for creating chamfer. The first option is angle and hypotenuse. Okay, that you can specify basically an angle with respect to the first line that you select and the hypotenuse length. Okay, the second option is that you specify the tool lengths. Okay, on your screen you can basically see the different options, the three options that are here. Okay, so you can use these three options to create chamfer. Let us first create the first option using first option, which is angle and hypotenuse. Okay, now the angle that you specify here is actually the angle with respect to the first line. Okay, so let me just create this chamfer by specifying angle and length value from the sketch tool itself. Say let it be an angle of 60 and let it be of some length, say 20. Okay, so you will see that the chamfer has been created with an angle of 60 with respect to the first line that I selected, and the hypotenuse length is of 20. Okay, so this is when I selected this as my first line. Okay, you can also select vertical line as your first line. Let me just create a chamfer using vertical as my first line. I'll select this line, I'll select this as my second line, specify an angle value of let's say 60 and a length of let's say 10. Okay, when I create, you'll see that an angle of 60 has been created with respect to the first line that I selected, which is vertical line this time, and the length of 10 has been used for the hypotenuse. Okay, so you can either select this line or this line as your first line. Any line that you select as your first element, that line will be used to create angle, okay, for the chamfer. This is the first option, which is angle and hypotenuse. Okay, let us see the second option, which is tool lengths. Basically, if you create chamfer using length 1 and length 2, here the second option, first and second length. Okay, so the first length will be on the first element Okay, in this case I selected vertical as my first element and horizontal line as my second element. So the first length will be on the first element. Let that be say 10. Second length, let it be say 20. Okay, so you keep your cursor where you want a chamfer to be created. Okay, so based on that the solution will be applied. Okay, let's say enter. Let the value say this is 20. Okay, so you'll see length of 10 has been applied on my first element and length of 20 has been applied on my second element. Okay, let us see the third option, which is angle and length. The first option that we saw was angle and hypotenuse. This is angle and length. Okay, so the angle that I want to specify here is say 60 and length is say 10. Okay, so angle value is with respect to the first line that I select and the length is also on the first line. Okay, so that is how you can also create a chamfer using three options. Okay, you have three options. First is angle and hypotenuse. Second option is two lengths, that is first and second length. Third option is angle and length. Okay, now let us see the other options. Let me just delete these lines. Now some of the next tools that we are going to see are present in Relimitations toolbar. Let me just drag this toolbar out. Okay, so this is a toolbar and the first option that is there is trim. To demonstrate how this works, let me just create some lines. Okay, suppose these are the lines. Now what trim actually does is, there are actually two options in this. The first option is trim all elements, where the elements that you select will actually act as cutting elements, as well as these elements will get cut. Okay, so there will be mutual cutting action, okay, based on the elements that you select. Suppose I select this first option, which is trim all elements, and I select this as my first line and this as my second line. Okay, here let me just double click so that the command actually continues. Okay, let me select this as my first line and this as my second line. Okay, this as my first line and this as my second line. Okay, this as my first line and this as my second line. This as my first line and this as my second line. Okay, so what has happened is actually the lines are actually getting cut. The first line that I select and the second line that I select, they are both getting cut with respect to each other, and the portion where I actually click, that portion of the line is actually getting kept and the other portion is getting trimmed. Okay, so based on where you select is where the lines will get trimmed. Say suppose if I wish to keep these diamonds, okay, so I'll basically select here and here so that this portion and this portion gets deleted. Okay, so wherever you actually select, those portions of the line will be kept while the other will be deleted. Let me just show this to you. If I select here, so this line has been selected as a cutting element as well as the element that will get cut, and I select here, so this is my other cutting line or cutting element. Okay, so where you actually select is the portion of the line that will be kept. Okay, let me just click here and let me just click here. Okay, so the portion where I did not click, those portions get deleted. Okay, so this is where lines are actually cut with respect to each other. That is, both lines actually are cutting each other. Both are cutting elements as well as elements that are getting cut. Okay, what if you only want to trim one element? Then you can use this option, which is trim first element. Okay, here one element will get trimmed while the other element will not get trimmed, and the element that will get trimmed is the element that you select first. Okay, let me select this option. Suppose if I wish to simply trim this element, okay, I'll select this as my first element, and the element with respect to which I want to trim is this. Okay, so I'll select this as my other element. Here also the portion where you actually click is the portion that will be kept. Okay, if I would have clicked here, that portion would have been kept and that portion would have been deleted. Okay, let us see. Suppose this is the portion I want to cut. Okay, so I want to keep this portion. Okay, so I'll select here, and this is my cutting element, suppose, so I'll click here. Okay, so you will see this portion has been kept while this portion is getting deleted. Okay, so this is trim. Okay, let me just delete this. Now let us see how break works. The next tool, which is break, let us see how this works. Suppose if I have a line and have another line like this, okay, and I want to break one line with respect to the other, I can use this tool, which is break. When you select this tool, first you select the element that you wish to break, and then you select the element that you want to break it with. Okay, so this is the element I want to break it with. So you will see that the line has now been broken into two. This is my one line, this is the other line. Okay, so now it has been broken into two. Okay, you can also use point as your breaking element. Suppose, let me just delete this line and make a point here and point here, suppose. Okay, now I wish to break this line with respect to this particular point. I can use this tool again, break, select the line that you wish to break. Okay, then select the point as your breaking element. Okay, so you'll see that this line has now been broken into two. One is my this line, another is this line. Okay, let me just break it again, select this line and select this particular point. Okay, so you'll see again it has been broken into two. This one line, this is another line. So now there are three lines actually. Okay, so this is how you can use break. Also, suppose, let me just delete this. Suppose if I have a line and I just want to break it simply by clicking anywhere. Okay, that also you can do. Simply click on this tool, break, select the entity that you want to break, and then click anywhere on the line itself. Okay, it will break into two. Okay, you will see this is my one line, this is another line. Okay, let me just delete this. So that is how break works. Now let us see the next tool, which is quick trim. To demonstrate this to you, let me just make a rectangle and line. One more line perhaps. Now we have already seen how trim works. Basically, in that particular tool, in that particular command, what you were doing is you were selecting one edge and you were selecting another edge. Basically, you were selecting two elements with respect to which they were actually cutting each other, and based on where you selected, the element was actually kept and the other side was getting removed. Okay, but here if you select quick trim, basically everything here is actually a cutting edge, and where you select, that element will get trimmed with respect to the next entity that is present. So basically everything is cutting edge, but where you select, that thing is going to get cut. Okay, this is how trim works. Okay, quick trim works. So basically if I select here, it will get trimmed. Okay, if I select here, here also you'll see the entity will get removed. Okay, if I select here, okay, even if the line is standalone, suppose if there is no line, here you see, okay, this line is actually standalone. Okay, if I select this line, this will also get trimmed. That means it will get simply deleted. Okay, so that is how quick trim works when you have selected the default mode, which is break and rubber in. Okay, but suppose if you have selected break and rubber out, okay, here also the entity will actually get trimmed, but where you select, okay, that portion of the entity will actually be kept. You remember that in the previous case, when we use break and rubber in, the entity where we selected actually get trimmed, right? But here, if I select here that particular entity, that means basically that portion of the entity will be kept, but the outermost portion, that is the outer portion of the entity, will actually be deleted. So basically this is sort of an inverse of break and rubber in, that is break and rubber out. Okay, let me just use this on this line as well. Okay, so here you can see when I select this particular line with the option break and rubber out, the outermost portion of the line actually get trimmed. Okay, now let us see the third option, which is break and keep. Okay, so here nothing much happens. You simply select a line. Okay, when you select the line, it would break into pieces depending upon the next entity that it encounters, because suppose if I select here, this line will actually get broken into two. One will be this shorter portion and other will be this longer portion. Okay, let me just select here. Okay, so you'll see this is one portion and this is another portion of the line. Okay, if I select the line from here, if I select it from the middle, you'll see it gets broken into three, because if I select it from here, it will get broken with respect to this line, and here it will get broken with respect to this line. Let me just select it here. Okay, you'll see now this is in three pieces. Okay, so that is how break and keep works. Okay, now let me just delete this. The next tool is close arc, and you can use this tool basically to close any arc that you have. Suppose if I have this arc on my screen, something like this, okay, I can use the tool close arc to close this. Okay, I'll select the tool and then I'll select the arc that I need to close. Okay, this is how you can use close arc. Not only this, suppose if you have an ellipse, so suppose if you have an elliptical arc like this and you want to close this, you can also close this using close arc. Okay, select this and select the ellipse. Now, you know, these tools that I'm discussing right now, they may not seem very useful and they may not be very useful in your day-to-day working, but knowing that such an option actually exists sometimes actually helps solve an obscure problem that you may not actually face on a daily basis. So you should know that such an option actually exists. That's it. Okay, so moving on, let me just delete this. The next tool is complement, and you can use this to create a complement of an incomplete arc that you have, or incomplete elliptical arc. Suppose if you have an arc something like this and you want to create a complement of this, that means you want to remove this and you want to have the remaining portion of the arc. You can use this tool to create that. So that is how you can create using complement. Okay, you can do the same with elliptical arc as well. Okay, let me just delete this. Now let us have a look at the third toolbar, which is transformations toolbar. Let me just drag this out. Okay, transformation toolbar. The first tool present in the transformation toolbar is mirror. Okay, suppose if you have several entities or even one entity for that matter, and you want to create a mirror image of that, you can simply select all the entities that you want to mirror and select the tool. Okay, mirror, and then select the line about which you want to mirror this. You can also select vertical or horizontal axis if you wish. In my case, I'm doing this I'm selecting vertical as my mirroring element. You'll see basically the elements get mirrored about the line or the axis that you select. Okay, you can also make a selection beforehand, or you can make a selection after selecting the tool. Okay, let me just delete this. Okay, so suppose if I have a circle here and a line here, okay, and what I want is basically I want to mirror the circle about this line. I can use this tool, basically mirror. First I'll select the entity or entities that I want to mirror, then I select the line about which I want to mirror it, okay, or axis about which I want to mirror it. Okay, so it will basically mirror. This is much like the symmetry constraint that we applied using this constraint defined in dialog box. Okay, this is just like that. Okay, either you can basically create entities and then apply this constraint, that is mirror constraint, or you can basically create an entity and mirror it about an axis. It's basically the same thing. Okay, too many ways to skin a cat. So next option is symmetry. Basically, if you have an entity and you want basically a symmetrical entity with respect to a line, you can use this tool. Select the tool and select the entity that you want to basically make a symmetry of, and then select the line or the axis about which you want it symmetric. The original entity will be deleted and the other entity will be created which is symmetrical to the line that you selected. Okay, that's how this works, symmetry. Let me just remove this. Now the next tool present in the transformation toolbar is translate, and you can use this tool basically to move your entity or your geometry from one place to another. Let us suppose that I have a circle here somewhere on the screen, okay, and I wish to move this circle by some distance, or I wish to place this circle at some location. I can do that using this tool which is translate. Okay, I'll select the tool and then I'll select the entity that I wish to translate. Okay, at the moment I simply want to translate, that is move this entity from one place to another, so I will deselect this option which is duplicate mode. Okay, if I wish to create copies, I'll keep this selected, but I don't want to create copies. I'll keep this as deselected. Okay, then you'll specify basically the start point or basically the reference point with respect to which you want to move your entity. Okay, I have chosen this as the origin since it makes it a little easy. Okay, now you can either specify the length value, that is the distance between the start point that I have selected and the end point. Okay, you can specify that length value from this particular dialog box. Okay, this particular portion, you can either specify the length value from here, or you can specify the end point in the sketch tools toolbar. Let us see each one of them one by one. Suppose I specify the end point. Okay, let that point be origin, so it will be h as 0 and v also as 0, so that will position my circle now in the new location which is origin. Let me just enter that and you will see the circle is now positioned at origin. Okay, had I specified value, let us see how that works. Suppose if I select the translate tool again, select my circle. Okay, this time again I want to select this as my start point origin, and now I don't specify the sketch tools endpoint, rather I specify the length value, so let that length value be 50. Okay, when I say 50 and enter, you will see now what it has done is it is now providing me all the directions in which I can move my entity to. Okay, so you'll see that the entity is always at a distance of 50 from the start point, and I can now position it using my mouse wherever I want. Okay, so this is another way in which you can basically use translate. Okay, so say I want to move it in vertical direction, I'll keep it like this. Okay, I'll keep it like this and press my mouse key. Okay, so you'll see it has translated in this vertical position and my distance of 50 which I entered. Okay. Now you can also create copies using translate option. Let us see how to do that. If I select translate option and select the entity which I wish to move and the start point, okay, you can turn this option as on duplicate mode and specify the number of entities that you wish to create. Okay, say I want 3 entities to be created. Okay, so I'll keep this as 3, and same, you'll use the same option. Either you specify the endpoint, okay, that will be the location of the next entity, that is the entity next to the original entity, okay, or you specify the value, okay, the value of length value, that will be the distance between the entity, all the entities, basically the first entity that's original and the adjacent entity, that is the next entity. Okay, likewise the distance between the adjacent and all the adjacent entities will be the value that you specify. Okay, so I want the length value to be 50 between each of the entities, so I'll keep that value as 50. Let me just enter that, okay, and say okay. So you'll see now there are 3 more entities with each having a value of length value of 50 between each other. Okay, so suppose if I measure it, we'll find this distance to be 50. Okay, between all the entities that are there, this distance will be 50. Okay, now let us see, there are some more options in this particular tool. Now suppose if the circle measures to be around 50 mm. Okay, the circle has a dia of 50 mm, and I want that when I translate or create copies of the circle, this constraint should actually be preserved. Okay, so you can use that option in translate toolbar. Okay, if I select the circle, select the point, and I keep this option as selected, that is keep internal constraints as selected, you'll find that when the copies are created, say let it be a value of 100 this time, and I say enter. Okay, so you'll see the entities that are now created, all the circles that are created, they will have a diameter value applied to them because I selected that option as, that is keep internal constraints, I kept that option as selected. Okay, this option, okay, keep internal constraints, that is the reason that this diameter value has been preserved and applied to other circles as well. Okay, now suppose if I knew the location of this circle with respect to horizontal, okay, say let it be at a distance of 40. Okay, and I wish to keep this constraint also, which is actually an external constraint. Okay, external constraint because it is not internal, it is not related to this particular geometry, but it is specifying the location of the circle with respect to an external reference. Okay, so it is an external constraint. Okay, say I want to keep this constraint also while I'm creating copies, so there's an option for this as well in translation, which is keep external constraint. Okay, so I can select the entity that I wish to copy or translate, then the point, that is reference point, and then you can specify the length value. Say suppose let it be of some length 100. Okay, when I say enter with the external constraints selected, okay, I'll keep this as selected and say okay, and let me position it like this. Okay, something like this. You'll see that now external constraint is also preserved. Okay, it is specifying that it is at a distance of 40 from the horizontal. Okay, if I would have not selected that, that is external, keep external constraint, then this constraint would not have been created. Okay, also, although this is reference at the moment, that is, it's in brackets, that means it's not affecting the geometry, but if you want to remove the reference, you can remove it. Okay, and so that it will obey that constraint. Okay, I hope you understand the difference between internal and external constraints and how to preserve them while using the translate option. Okay, now there is an option called snap mode in this. Okay, you'll see that while I'm translating this, you'll see that it is now moving some random value. Okay, when I'm basically moving my cursor in screen, it is moving some random value. Okay, but if you wanted to move it some specified distance or in specified graduations, some specified steps, okay, you can use this value as snap mode. You can use this selection option, snap mode. Okay, when you turn this on, you will see that when I now try to move my entities by moving the cursor in the graphical user interface, it is now moving by some specified distance, which is in the increments of 5 mm. Can you see? Now it's 125, then it's becoming 130, and it's becoming 135, 140, like that. Okay, you can also change this steps value. If you right click here, you can change the step value and say I want it to be in the steps of 20 mm instead. Okay, 20 mm. Now you will see it will move in graduations of 2060, right? You will see that now it is in graduations of 20, increment of 20. Can you see? Okay, so you can also use this option for translation. Okay, let me just delete this. Let us now see the next tool, which is rotate, and how it works. To demonstrate this to you, I'll make a sketch. So let me first make that. Now suppose this is the desired sketch, okay, almost made, but I want to create copies of this particular circle, and I want copies, these are basically 8 copies. Okay, so these are basically 8 holes in total, so I want the remaining copies. Okay, I can create those copies using this tool, which is rotate. Okay, and here I can specify the number of copies that I want. Okay, I want them to be 7. Okay, because one is already there. Okay, so one is already there, including that it will be 8, so I want 7 more. Okay, and then this option will actually come available only if you select duplicate mode. Okay, and I also want to conserve the constraints if there are any constraints applied on this. Okay, I want them to be conserved for other circles that are created. Okay, so I'll use this. Then you will specify the geometry to be rotated. Okay, this is the geometry. Okay, then you will specify the rotation point, okay, about which it will be rotated. That is origin in my case. Okay, this point. And then specify the reference line. Okay, I want to rotate it with respect to this line, so I'll click on this circle center. Okay, and then you can specify the angle here. Okay, since the angle, basically this is the angle that will be divided equally among all the circles, so this will be basically 360 is a complete angle, and we'll divide it by 8, because although we are creating 7 entities, which are additional entities, one is already there, the angle value would be 360 by 8, because the angle needs to be divided among 8 entities. Okay, so we'll keep this as 360 divided by 8. I hope this is not confusing. If we need to have, suppose, 5 additional entities, we'll still keep the angle as 360 divided by 6 because 1 is already there. Okay, so we'll keep this as 360 divided by 8 because 1 is already there. Okay, and therefore we are having 7 entities here. Okay, so let's say okay, you'll see the circles are getting created. Okay, and diameter value has been applied, okay, to all the circles. Additional constraints which may be required, say this circle is still moving. Okay, so what you can do is you can constrain it, you can basically coincide it with the horizontal, coincide, okay, something like this, and also it should coincide with this particular circle. Okay, so something like this. You need to apply this for all the circles. Okay, so that is how you can basically rotate, use rotate command to create copies. Okay, remember this, these additional circles that are there, they are not been constrained right now. You need to constrain them as well. Okay, okay, so let me just delete this. The next option is scale. Let us see how this works. Now, as the name implies, this tool scale can be used for scaling entities. Suppose if I have a spline here, okay, something like this, and I wish to scale this, I can do it using this tool scale. Okay, and if you wish to create a duplicate, you can select this tool which is duplicate mode, and if you have any constraints that are applied to your entity, you can conserve those using this particular option. Okay, so also you'll need to specify the point with respect to which you want to scale your entity. Suppose if I select this point as my reference point, okay, so it will be scaled with respect to this point. That means that this point actually would not move in the entity that is getting scaled. Suppose I select this point as my center point, or the point with respect to which I want to scale it. Now when I basically move my cursor, you can see it is getting scaled. Okay, so you can enter a value of 0.5 to make it half. Okay, you can specify a value of 2 to double the size. Okay, like that. Also there is a snap mode available. Okay, if you wish to use a snap mode, you can of course use a snap mode. So basically when you move your cursor right now, you are seeing that it is now moving in the increments of 0.1. okay, but I can change that increment by changing the step, say, to 1. Okay, now you'll see now it's moving in the increments of 1. Okay, so I want to, suppose I want to make it double the size. So when it reaches the value of 2, okay, I'll click on the screen. You'll see now there are two splines, one is double the size of the original. Okay, let us see, while it has some constraints applied to it. This point is at a distance of 20, suppose, and let me just scale it now. I'll scale this. This time I'll scale, say, suppose with respect to this point. Okay, and say let me make it double size. Okay, you'll see that this point has not moved, since this was my reference point, and the constraint that was in this case 20 has been conserved, has been transferred over to this curve as well. Although it is reference, you can of course change it to a value that will drive your geometry. Okay, so that is how scaling works. Let me just delete these. Okay, let us see the next option, which is offset. If you want to offset something, you can use this tool to create copy. Suppose if I have a rectangle like this, okay, and on some at some corner there is, and it has a corner applied here. Okay. Okay, suppose it is like this, and I wish to create an offset of this entity that you see here on the outside or on the inside, or say suppose on both the sides. Okay, I can use this tool, offset. Okay, now there are different ways in which you can basically select the entity. Okay, as you can see that this line is in point continuity with this line is in tangent continuity with this curve, and this curve is in tangent continuity with this line, and this line is in point continuity with this line. Okay, so depending on the option that you select in sketch tools, the selection will be made. If I select this particular option, which is no propagation, so based on the entity that you select and the option that you select here, the propagation will happen. I selected no propagation, so if I select this line, no propagation will happen. That means only that entity will be offsetted. Okay, that only that entity will offset. Okay, but if I select this option, which is tangent propagation, okay, and I suppose select this entity, let me just deselect this, let me just select this option which is tangent propagation, and if I select this entity, okay, anything that is in tangent propagation with this particular line, all those entities will be selected, as you can see. Okay, but say suppose if I select no propagation, that means only that particular line will be selected. Can you see? Okay, so you can change the propagation from here. Either you want to tangent propagation. If I say suppose select point propagation, that means all entities that are in point continuity with that the line that are selected will be selected. Okay, so that is how you can change the propagation method using these three. You have either the option of no propagation, or you can use tangent propagation, or you can use point propagation. Okay, point propagation is basically you simply want to select one line and you want to select all the entities that are adjoining it. You can use this option, which is point continuity, point propagation. Okay, I have selected point propagation. That means I want to offset all of my entities. Okay, and say I want only one instance to be created. Okay, and depending on the location where you basically click, the entity will be created, offset entity will be created. Or either you can specify the values in here, H and V values for the passing point. Okay, say suppose I enter a passing point of this origin. Okay, so it will be created at an offset of this point, basically a passing point for this particular entity. Okay, or you can specify an offset value from here. Say I want it at an offset of 2 mm. Okay, and say enter. Okay, you'll see that it has been created 2 mm outside the original entity. Okay, as you can see. Okay, let me just delete this. Let us see that again, offset. Okay, let me select an option of point propagation, so I'll select just one line. Everything else will be automatically selected because I selected point propagation. Offset of say 2, but this time I want the offset to be inside, so I'll keep my cursor as inside. Okay, let me specify a value of 2 again, this. Okay, offset of 2 mm. So since my cursor is inside, as you can see, and I specify a value of 2, so an offset will be created inside. Okay, if you measure this, the distance will be 2 mm. Okay, within offset there is also an option of create an offset both sides. Okay, you can also use this option. Suppose I want to create an offset of this particular profile on both sides. I can use this option, offset both sides. Say I this time only want to create an offset for this line, and this line. So let me use this option, which is tangent propagation. So I'll select this line. Okay, and let me just create one instance only, offset of say suppose 2. Okay, or let it be 5 suppose. You'll see the propagation is tangent and offset has been created at a distance of 5. Okay, and offset is created on both sides. Okay, so that is how offset works. Now since, let me just delete this. Now since we have learned a lot more tools in this particular video, I think we'll be able to create the sketch that we created in the previous video a lot more easy. So let us try and create that. Let me just fit all in and let us try and create the last sketch that is there on your screen. Okay, so let us try and create that. I'll simply first create a rectangle. Okay, say something like this. Okay, let me just dimension it using constraint values. Say let this be 100. Okay, and this is 90. Okay, let me apply some symmetric constraints between this line. Okay, did you see that I actually applied symmetry using this particular tool? I did not go to constraint defining dialog box. Okay, you can use this tool also to create a symmetry constraint. Okay, it makes it a little fast. Let me show that to you again. When this tool is selected and when I'm trying to basically dimension two lines, suppose this and this, okay, while it is creating the dimension, okay, you can right click and go into contextual menu and go to allow symmetry line. Okay, and select the symmetry line that you want. Okay, so that will automatically apply your symmetry constraint. Okay, so this is one way in which also you can apply symmetry constraint rather than going to this particular tool which is constraint define in dialog box. It makes it a little slow process. Okay, now we had some arcs here. Okay, instead of creating arcs, I'll create circles instead. Okay, directly create circles. When the circle is at a center point, okay, you'll see that this blue dot with solid center appears. Okay, that means that you are creating it at the center point of the line. Okay, and that is what I want. And say let it be of some value which is 30. So let me apply some constraint which is diameter value of 30. So actually it's radius, so let me apply radius value of 30 and say that. Okay, so that is my circle. Now I can actually make it apply mirror. Okay, this particular tool that we learned today, I can basically select the circle. Okay, apply mirror transformation. Okay, and select this vertical axis. You'll see that another circle is created now. What I can do is now quick trim, simply quick trim. I don't want this, I don't want this. It is saying it is impossible to trim a lengthened element. Okay, do you want to convert the length into distance? I'm okay with that. Okay, it's saying that this particular thing, this 90, okay, it's basically a length element. Okay, do you want to convert this into distance? I'm saying I'm okay. So simply say yes. Now it's saying the middle point constraint might be modified or even deleted after this operation. Do you confirm this modification? I'm saying okay. Okay, it's saying that the middle point constraint, this middle point, we created circle in the middle because it was showing the point, right? Solid blue point. So I said it's okay. I can of course reapply some constraints even if it gets deleted, so I'm okay with that. Say yes. Okay, also I want to trim this. Okay, I also want to trim this. Okay, so it's more or less done. Let me just exit this tool. Now this is what my profile was, right? Now let me just see if it is fully constrained. It's saying ISO constrained. Okay, so it works. This is fine. Now you'll see there is a lot of difference in which how we created this profile last time and how we have created this time. Okay, This time it took only a minute or two, right? But in the previous case it took us around 5-6 minutes, right? So as you learn more tools, it will become easier to make sketches. Now we are more or less done with the drawing tools that we have in the sketcher. In the next video I'll show you how to create more advanced sketches. If you like the video, please give it a like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.